Hello and welcome back. I am Mr. Sosotris, and I'm going to be continuing a series that I started a while ago. I was doing spoiler-filled recaps of all of the Wicked books in kind of anticipation of the release of the movie Wicked Part 1. And since we've got Wicked Part 2 coming up in a month, I figured I should continue with the series and go through the 3 Another Day books, which is kind of a sequel slash spin-off of the Wicked books. And the first book in that series is The Brides of Maracoor, which is the first book in the Another Day trilogy. So it's been a while since I've done the previous book. So there's 4 books in the Wicked Years series, which is kind of the main thrust. And that one follows kind of the life of Elphaba and then the fallout of the events of the first book and kind of her legacy. And so the second book focuses on her son Lear, whom I really, really like. The third book focuses more on the Cowardly Lion and also Lear's half-sister. And the fourth book focuses on the events surrounding sort of Dorothy's return to Oz and sort of the culmination of all of the different plot threads that have been going through. And so just to give a kind of a recap of what the story is at this point in the series, I'll try to go through this as quick as possible. So, following Dorothy's second return to Oz, things in the land have been kind of shaken up. So Shell, who's Elphaba's brother, he declared himself the Emperor Apostle of Oz after the Wizard of Oz left. And so he's been deposed, and Ozma is kind of the rightful ruler. She's like the child ruler, is back. And the Cowardly Lion is sort of looking out for things while she grows up, because she's still quite young. In the original Oz books, Ozma sort of took control right away as soon as she was brought back. And so she kind of ruled Oz as like a child empress kind of thing. But in this one, they don't do that. This is, again, the Wicked books are very much a different continuity from the original Oz books and from the movie. So it's very much its own thing. It's also very different from the musical version of Wicked. So that's also a different spot in the multiverse, so to speak. So anyways, Ozma was disguised as a boy named Tip to protect her from the days when the wizard first arrived. There's this witch, Mombi, who is kind of a Munchkinland nationalist, so to speak, and she used a spell from the Grimmery, which is a book of magic that comes from our world. It's a book that belonged to Merlin that was brought to Oz by Merlin, and the original Wizard of Oz was sort of looking for it because he wanted real power. And so the Grimmery, Mombi used the Grimmery to transform Lear back into his human shape. He was disguised as an elephant in order to smuggle him into Munchkinland under the watchful gaze of the Emperor Apostle and his cronies. But when she did the spell to kind of bring him back to his human form, it had a couple other effects. It removed a enchantment on Rain, who's Elphaba's granddaughter, and it revealed that she had green skin. She was born with green skin, but her father, Lear, he got an enchantment from like a snake, like a talking snake, capital S, in order to kind of disguise her so that she would be protected. And so throughout the 4th Oz book, Rain just has normal, like, flesh-colored skin, and she's not green. But the spell sort of revealed that she had green skin, and sort of she's forever like that. The spell also transformed Tip and revealed that he was Ozma, the Princess Ozma, in disguise. Now, Tip and Rain had sort of fallen in love. I think at this point, Rain was about, like, 12 or 13, maybe 14-ish. And so her and Tip had fallen in love. It was kind of her first sort of love. And when Tip was transformed back to Ozma, that really hurt her because she felt like she didn't know him at all. She tried to sort of reconnect with Ozma, but Ozma sort of said that like they couldn't be together, and that really hurt Rain. So Rain sort of tried to return to a normal life. She buried the Grimoire underneath Elphaba's broom, which she kind of stuck in the ground and then buried the Grimoire under it. And she just felt like things in her life were missing. So her father Lear broke up with Candle, who was Rain's mother, but they weren't really ever in love. They were sort of pushed together by circumstance, and she sort of used Lear to get pregnant while he was in a coma. And so Rain, like Candle and Lear just had kind of irreconcilable differences, and they broke up. And Rain, sort of as a result, was sort of left feeling a little lost, basically. She was just feeling like she had something that she needed to do. Her whole family had just kind of been broken up, and she was reeling from the revelation about Tip, and so she needed something else. So she took the Grimoire with her and took the broom, which the broom had kind of grown into a broom tree, which had a bunch of other brooms. So she took one of those off, and she discovered she could fly with it, just like Elphaba could and like Lear could. And she takes the Grimoire out across the desert. The talking goose Iscanary, who was sort of Lear's friend / familiar, kind of joins her and sort of helps her complete her journey across the desert, because there's a vast, vast desert outside Oz. And she flies out into the ocean, and that's kind of how the book ends. It's sort of her going off into the horizon with the Grimoire and the book, and she sees the ocean for the first time, and it's sort of this big thing. So now this series picks up following Rain with kind of what happens after. And I've said this before, but there's going to be tons of spoilers, so if you have not read The Brides of Maracoor or any of the Another Day books, don't watch this yet. Read the books first and then come back. Now, if you don't intend to read the books and just want to know a summary of what happens, then you can watch the movie or like this video and it's fine. But just know there's going to be spoilers, and if you don't want anything spoiled, you can read it yourself and then come back. So, all right, let's do this. It's broken up into two parts. We start with part 1, and then this first section is called The Brides. So we start out on the island of Maracoor. There's a cat here, where a group of seven women live. This is a sort of religious hermitage. They have sort of a ritualistic lifestyle. They cut the bottoms of their feet, and they weave, and it's sort of assumed that their actions sort of maintain order. They say like they keep time flowing, basically, by doing this. So one of the older brides who lived there, they're all different ages, she suffers a dire injury. I think she has a stroke maybe, and causes a bit of upset. So there's a relic that the brides watch over. It's called the Fist of Mara, and it's not ever explicitly stated, but it looks like this could be something from our world. And I'll give a little bit more detail later as we learn more about it. But there's a relic that the brides look over, and the one who's injured feels like she needs to pass on the knowledge of how to access it before she dies, because it's sort of the person who's oldest sort of has the knowledge of what to do with this relic. So at this point, Rain, her broom, which is now sort of rendered inert, and Iscanary wash up on the island, and Rain has amnesia at this point, so she doesn't really remember much of where she was. She knows that she was caught in a storm that came out of nowhere, and then she washed up on the island, and everything before that is really, really hazy. The brides can't really understand Iscanary at first. He can talk, and that's kind of weird to them, but they can't really understand his accent because he's got an Oz accent, and this is a different world. The world is sort of it kind of feels almost like ancient Greece-esque. It's not ancient Greece for sure, but like the aesthetics of this new land feel very kind of ancient Greece-ish. It's very cool. So Rain represents a disruption to the bride's lives because now there's 8 people on the island, and it's sort of tradition that there's supposed to only be 7. And so they're worried that like her being there will disrupt the balance that they maintain. Especially since they're expecting the arrival of an overseer from the mainland, and they don't know how he's going to react to an 8th girl, and the fact that she's green, which is a little unusual. So once the brides sort of realize what Iskanary's saying, it takes time for them to kind of understand his accent, but once they realize that they can kind of understand him, he's able to communicate a little bit. He tells them what Rain's name is, but he doesn't really say much else. Rain at this point is still not saying a whole lot, and she's kind of struggling to understand things. But at this point, the overseer arrives, and his name is Lucles. So now the POV switches to him, and we learn more about Lucles. Spoilers, I don't like him. But anyways, moving on. He's a minor adjutant of the Maracoor mainland. He serves the really complex bureaucracy of the city. The mainland bureaucracy, like the way it's just everyone is caught up in procedure and like important positions and using that to kind of lord over other people, and it's kind of this really ineffectual bureaucracy filled with like insecure people who use it to kind of make themselves feel important. So it's a lot of kind of pathetic mid-management people running an entire city. But he has a wife, 3 kids, a dog, a nice house, so naturally he's on his way to a midlife crisis. His job is to inspect the outposts of the city, including the Island of the Brides, which is called Maracoor Spot. I think it's what it's called, yeah. And the mainland is called Maracoor Abiding. So the brides try to sort of get the visit over with as soon as possible. They're keeping Rain hidden. They show him the relic. They don't take it out of the casket, but like they show it to him, and they're like, everything's fine, it's all good. Helia, who's the bride who suffered an attack, she admits at this point that she's like, it may be her time soon, and so she says in the future you might need to bring another child to kind of join the island and keep the number at 7, but she says she's still okay at that point. So at this point, the dog that Lucles came with, he sort of runs off and he sees Iskanary, and he starts barking and tries to attack the thing, and it causes a huge commotion. And Lucles sort of goes to see what's happening, and in doing so he discovers, one, that Iskanary can talk, because Iskanary says something mean to the dog after they pull the dog away. And then he also sees Rain, who's kind of been hiding nearby with 2 of the younger brides. So there's a kind of a debate that sort of starts up at this point over what should be done with Rain. Ultimately, Lucles leaves Rain behind and returns on his voyage, but he's still kind of thinking about her, and it sort of bothers her it bothers him that she is there. As they're coming back, they start to experience kind of some odd events. There's a moment where there's a bunch of blue and white songbirds that don't usually come out of the ocean. They sort of fly out and swarm the ship. The sailors take this as kind of an ill omen. Later on, as they get closer to land, they see a building that's just covered in owls, and the owls sort of again dive bomb the ship and start crashing into the sails and landing on the deck, and everyone's getting really uneasy because it just seems like things are acting kind of off. When they finally reach the city of Maracoor Abiding, the city looks like it's been attacked. It's devastated. It's mostly empty. There's not a lot of people there. They find one person who's able to talk to them and explains that they were attacked by an enemy armada that kind of came out of nowhere following a really bad storm. So Lucles searches for his family and finds his home abandoned. He fears that they're dead, but he does find a note that says that they fled to their mother's house, to his mother-in-law's house, inland. And as he's kind of thinking about all that's happened, he realizes that the strange storm, which brought the invaders sort of farther north than they normally could have been able to travel, must have been the same storm that arrived with Rain's arrival on the island. Mayhaps they're connected. Maybe. So, next up, we go to Rain and get her POV finally. So she can remember that she's been flying on a broom and she was caught in a storm, but she can't remember anything else. She has no memory of Oz, no memory of her family, nothing like that. Iskaneri at this point has also strained his wings in the storm and can't fly at present. Over time, Rain is able to kind of match the bride's accent, and so they can understand her better, and she's able to sort of communicate much better. And they're trying to figure out kind of how she's going to fit in with the island. She doesn't tell the brides about her broom, which seems to have been ignored by them. It's there, and it's fine, but it's just kind of been set aside as like a piece of flotsam, so to speak. And Iskaneri at this point isn't really keen to reveal too much about their past. Partly to protect themselves, he doesn't want to reveal too much about who they are in case it'll endanger them, but it also seems like he doesn't want to tell Rain too much about her own past, because he's trying to sort of, see how much she remembers. She doesn't admit to him at this point that she has lost her memory, but he suspects it, and so he doesn't really venture any details, hoping that she will kind of reveal something. So at this point, the POV switches again, and it switches to Kasi, who's one of the younger brides. She's like, I think 12. Her full name is like Akashiana or something. It's a very pretty name. So Helia, who's the bride who had the stroke, she asks Kasi to help her get the key to the vessel, like the key that locks the vessel that holds the Fist of Mara. Helia's worried she might die and wants to pass on what she knows to someone else, or that's what she says. She tells Kasi where the key is and how to get it, and she goes on kind of a mini quest to get this key. She has to kind of travel for a bit to get to it. It's just off the island. And so they get the artifact, and Helia sort of reveals a little bit about what it does. She says that if you put herbs into the box with the artifact, it will make the herbs become poisonous. And she tells Kasi this to be like, my rival, who's kind of one of the other elders on the island, she's like, we don't want her to get this because she doesn't have our best interest at heart, and if she gets the key, she'll maybe use this to poison Rain, and we can't let her do that, so you have to keep the key safe, and I'll kind of keep you updated on what needs to be done. So there's obviously stuff going on there. So now the POV switches back to Lucles. He's on his way to find his family. He travels, talks to the people he meets, trying to learn more about the attacks. He's still kind of convinced Rain has something to do with it, but he doesn't know what. He does eventually find his family, and there's this kind of weird moment when he shows up where his daughters are there, and they're like running out to see him, and he just kind of ignores them and keeps asking about his son, who is ill. He learns, but his daughters are kind of hurt that he doesn't even kind of acknowledge them at first, because he's more interested in his son. Again, we don't like Lucles. He's sort of set up in the story as kind of a flawed but likable character, but I don't like him at all. Anyways, so now we're going into part 2. So this next section is called the Fist of Mara. So Rain finally admits to Iskaneri that she has amnesia. He fills in some of the gaps, but not all. They wonder if they can get the broom to fly again, but Rain isn't sure. One of the older brides, Murka, dies, which is unusual because everyone sort of thought that Helia was going to be the one to die. Murka was Helia's rival, the one that she sort of warned Kasi about. And while everyone's distracted, kind of grieving over this, Rain tries to get the broom to fly again, but it just doesn't work. So the brides insist that Rain join them, because now that Murka is dead, there's now 7 women on the island again, and Rain can be kind of number 7. And I think it's Helia who sort of insists. She's like, nope, you're here, we're conscripting you, you're going to be one of the brides now. And they hold a funeral for Murka. So now we jump back to Lucles. He asks his wife what happens to his son. She tells him how he tried to protect them on the road as they were fleeing. He fought off some wolves, and he succumbed to sort of injury and exhaustion. And Lucles is wrapped with guilt that he wasn't there for him. So he's all sad. Anyways, back to Rain. Iscanary at this point wants to escape, but Rain isn't so sure. Kasi is very deeply affected by the death of Murka for some reason, and Rain is sort of trying to figure out what to do, because Iscanary thinks that they need to leave, but Rain wants to sort of wait a little bit. She doesn't really feel super connected to the people on the island, but at the same time she feels a little safe at this point, and so she wants to just kind of bide her time while she figures out what's going on. So now we go back to Lucles. While staying with his family, he has an encounter with sort of a spectral figure that seems to be like a god from their mythology. The figure appears, kind of does some stuff, and then disappears, and it sort of shakes him up. He also feels oppressed by his family at this point, because, you know, being a father is just too hard, and so he wants to leave and go back to the city, and he wants to bring his son, whose name is Lyrics, with him. And his wife is horrified, obviously, because his son is injured and not very strong, but he insists, and so he leaves his family behind to go back to the city. So now we go back to the island. We've got Kasi, who notices that Iscanary has left. Rain is okay with this. She just sort of says, oh yeah, he's off doing his own thing, that's okay. But Rain is still on the island, and they're trying to figure out what to do. They try to get her to join them in their rituals, like the ritual scarring of the bottom of their feet, but she isn't really ready to, commit to this. There's also some kind of odd seismic shifts that kind of are happening at random on the island. It's like there's just something off about the world itself, and there's weird things happening. Also, one of the brides sees a spectral figure from their folklore, and it shakes them all up. Rain kind of wrestles with her feeling of safety, and her desire to learn more about who she is kind of increasing. So there's things happening around, basically. So the next section is called Return of the Pious Enterprise. That's the ship that Lucles arrived on. So he arrives back in town. He's reprimanded by his superiors for not immediately making a report to them. He explains he went to see his family, but they don't care, obviously. He learns that there have been winged monkeys that have been seen, asking about a green castaway. He's taken to see the ruler, who's called the Great, what is it, Vasil. It's Bvasil, Vasil. And he kind of explains the situation about Rain and what's going on in the island. And Lucles is sort of ordered to go take Rain and bring her back for questioning, and to take the Fist of Mara and bring it back. So they arrive at the island. Lucles tries to convince Helia to give up Rain. She explains that one of them has died, and now Rain is part of the Seven, and that taking her away would disrupt the balance. But when he says that he's taking the Fist of Mara away too, tempers flare, and everyone is sort of really upset by this. And in the hubbub, it's revealed that Kasi is the one who poisoned Murka using the Fist of Mara so that Rain would not have to leave. Now, Helia obviously told Kasi, about the poisoning properties of the Fist of Mara as a way for her to sort of take out her rival, so she would be sort of more in charge. But Kasi didn't really realize that she was being manipulated, and so she just thought that she was, getting rid of someone who was a negative influence in order to make sure that Rain could stay, because she likes Rain. And so it's a whole thing. So there's this murder thing, and Kasi admits to it. Lucles believes that the strange things happening on the mainland and on the island are the result of Rain's presence, and insists that she must leave, and so he takes Rain and Kasi away, as well as the Fist of Mara. So next section is called the House of Balances. So this is where we get the court stuff. So Lucles is brought to a court, a hearing, to investigate what's been happening. Rain is imprisoned. Lucles tries to explain what happened, and explains that he doesn't think Rain was involved with the enemy attack, but he does think that her arrival with the storm may be connected. Rain and Kasi are able to sort of bond a little bit in jail. Rain is sort of a bit standoffish, but Kasi talks about how much she likes Lyrics, Lucles' son, who was on the ship with them, and she only knew him for like a day, maybe 3 days, but it's sort of revealed that Kasi sort of likes him, and she thinks he's cute. Rain doesn't really trust him that much, but the conversation does stir up a memory of Tip. And so Rain can't really remember who Tip was, but it sort of starts to unlock things in her memory, and she's trying to figure out what it is. So Lucles and his family return to their home. They find it kind of untouched. They're able to move back in. Life returns to normal. He prepares to return to the court for the questioning of Rain and Kasi. He visits the Great Vassal and learns that the Fist of Mara was discovered in a scorched pit and renders all around it barren. It's believed the raiders who attacked the city may have been looking for it, but that may also just be a theory. It's sort of uncertain. It could also have been that the storm that showed up just blew an enemy navy off course, and they took advantage of a town that didn't know them. Either way, that's sort of what people are thinking. So Lucles is then horrified to learn that the brides who have all been on the island have all been affected by this fist without their knowing. And he's sort of a little horrified that they're all sort of rendered barren by the influence of this thing. And the way it's described, it looks like it might be some sort of like fragment of a radioactive bomb of some kind, or it might just be like a radioactive missile or something, but it's kind of described as sort of looking a bit like a small bomb, some kind of metal thing, but it's obviously radioactive. And so Lucles is sort of, he's questioning his allegiance to the bureaucracy that he's kind of caught up in, because he doesn't realize that, or he doesn't think that the women on the island deserve to be treated like this. The ruler sort of makes a suggestion that maybe Lucles' youngest daughter could be the next bride, and uses that to sort of encourage him to reveal if he believes that Rain is connected with the invaders. They aren't able to finish their conversation at this point. Lucles has to leave abruptly, for gastro-related issues, but it's sort of left unfinished. So the court day arrives. Rain's memories are starting to come back at this point. She does remember at this point that during the storm, or maybe right before, she remembers right before the storm that she dropped the grimoire into the ocean. She threw it into the ocean. She was trying to get rid of it and didn't want its influence affecting any others. And so she throws it into the ocean, and then shortly after that, the storm arrived, which washed her up on the island and also blew the enemy navy way off course, and they attacked Maracoor. So the first court case at this point is Kasi's murder trial. Rain is there, but she's sort of going to be dealt with later. Kasi's found guilty and sentenced to imprisonment for 28 years, and she's 12 at this point, so everyone else is a little horrified. Rain and Lucles try to sort of convince the court to be lenient. Even Larix, his son, tries to substitute himself in order to save Kasi, but he's ignored. And so everyone is feeling kind of hopeless. The flying monkeys that have been looking for Rain finally find her when she's in prison, and they help her and Kasi escape. The broom sort of starts to work a little bit, and Rain sort of at this point is kind of putting things together from what she heard in the court, and she realizes that the strange magical things that are happening, the spectral appearances and the behavior of animals and the magical apparitions that everyone is seeing, is a result of her throwing the grimoire into the ocean. It sort of unlocked the magic of this world and is turning their mythology and folklore into real life. And so at this point she fully kind of remembers her past, and she realizes that she has to return to Oz at this point. Kasi is being a melodramatic preteen, and so she jumps off a cliff hoping to find freedom in death now that she's not a bride anymore, and she's free of prison. But the monkeys save her at the last minute, and they all escape. So the rest of the brides at this point who are there for the court thing, they sort of consider leaving too, but they realize that they have no place to go except back to their island, and so they return. And so that is the end of the book. It sort of ends in the middle of like all this chaos happening. It's not necessarily a cliffhanger, but it doesn't really resolve what happens to Rain and Kasi. So we're going to continue with that next week, which I think, yeah, next week. And we'll do book 2, which is The Oracle of Maracoor, which is actually my favorite of the 3. Overall, this book is pretty good. My favorite stuff is all the life on the island with the brides. I love that. Their community, their rituals, the different personalities, Rain's interactions with them. I love that stuff. It's very, very different from the other Wicked books, but it just feels, it's got this kind of cozy vibe that I can't really describe. It's just, you know, on a small island with a small community of women, just seeing how they live their lives and their devotion to their religion and the way that Rain disrupts all that. It's so good. I genuinely really like that stuff. The stuff with Lucles, though, I just don't like him. He's obviously trying to be sort of the like relatable middle-aged dad character, but he's just not someone that you really want to root with. He's a little spineless, and he's a little cliche in the way that he's sort of is like, oh, you know, the wife and daughters are wasting my time and they're holding me back, and I need to go and do important things because I'm important, even though he's not. He's a very kind of mid to low level functionary in this big complicated bureaucracy. And then at the end, when he sort of suddenly becomes like a champion for Kasi and sort of an ally to Rain as he's trying to defend her in the court, it doesn't really ring true, because he seems like someone who would just want to sort of protect his own stability and just do whatever's needed. So I don't know, maybe it's kind of suggested that his influence, or he's influenced by Rain and sort of, you know, is learning to care about other people because his small world has been shaken up, but it's not really in the text as much as I would have liked. So anyways, that's the first book, and I am genuinely excited about book 2 because the second one is really good, and it connects back to the Wicked series in kind of a big way, so we'll get to that. But I will see you next week, and in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.